and we're back for episode 3.3. Our episode begins with the funeral of Catelyn's father, Hoster Tully. Catelyn's brother, Edmure, is tasked with setting Hoster's bow to flame, but is unable to do it. So Cat's uncle, the Blackfish, wrestles the bow from the little fuck-up Edmure and does the deed himself. Then he walks away like a badass without even seeing his arrow hit. Now in the book, this funeral goes a bit differently. Keep in mind, Edmure is the Lord of the Riverlands. He is also a son who has just lost his father. So in truth, Show Blackfish is a complete and utter dick. In the book, Edmure does miss his mark, but Blackfish politely asks to assist Edmure and properly addresses his nephew as Lord. Afterwards, Cat and Blackfish even talk about how much pain Edmure must be in, and the Blackfish even says there is no shame in missing his shot. In our next scene, Robb is upset with Edmure for disobeying orders and defeating Lannister forces in the field. And Blackfish quite hypocritically berates Edmure for not addressing Robb with proper titles. Again, in the book, Blackfish is much more polite. Now here Robb is upset with Edmure for defeating the Mountain in the field and losing a few hundred men. In the book, Edmure's screw-up is rather enormous. Edmure takes the fight to Tywin's forces in the Riverlands, and so Tywin's forces are not drawn to the Westerlands. Not only is Tywin a million times more important than the Mountain, but Edmure's move allowed Tywin's forces to escape and make it to the Blackwater, where they were victorious. There's a good chance that Edmure's fuck-up saved the Lannisters from destruction. Now next we get some extra comedy where the small council chooses some seats. In the book, the Tyrells have already moved into power, and Mace Tyrell is named Master of Ship. Kevan Lannister is also in town as Master of Law. In the book, this small council scene includes a divvying up of spoils after the Battle of the Blackwater. Various lords are dispossessed, and their lands are given to other lords. Most notably, the Tyrells take all the Florent lands. The bulk of Stannis' supporters are Florents, as is his wife. Of course, this is a huge shift of power in the Reach, and I imagine it's going to cause trouble for the Tyrells later on. Next, Littlefinger announces that he's going to the Vale to marry Lysa Arryn and bring her to the Lannister cause. Littlefinger's reasoning on why he's now eligible to marry Lysa is that he's now Lord of Harrenhal and has a title worthy to marry her. This reasoning is repeated several times in the book, but it just doesn't seem to add up. Lysa always wanted to marry Littlefinger and didn't care about titles. It was her father, Hoster Tully, who cared about that. Once Lysa was an adult widow, she could marry whoever she damned pleased. High Lords marry Lesser Lords all the time. Duncan the Small married a commoner, Doran Martell married a foreigner, Ned's grandfather married a clanswoman. It seems Littlefinger's desire for Harrenhal went beyond the title. Now next we have this little extra bit where Locke's men are singing The Bear and the Maiden Fair. Now this song is sung a lot in Westeros, and as I said last time, it's a song about rape. But the song also contains many elements of Brienne's story. However, a lot of the allusions are ambiguous and certainly open to interpretation. The song contains a maid with honey in her hair, which could be Brienne or Jaime, and it mentions 3 boys, who might be Brienne's 3 potential rapists, or maybe the 3 men she kills at Crackclaw Point in the book. It also mentions a goat, which is likely Vargo Hoat, the head of the Brave Companions, and there's a dancing bear, which could be Rorg, or Brienne herself, or the bear in the bear pit. And while it's tough to identify the exact meaning of everything, the song is generally about a journey and about a rape, which is Brienne's story. You see, here in book and show, Jaime warns Brienne that she will be raped. The rapists are named Rorg, Zolo, and Shagwell. Yes, the last one's name is Fuckwell. Brienne avoids the rape, but her later book journey is about her running into and defeating her potential rapists. Now yes, a couple episodes back I trashed the show a bit for Brienne rape-killing a dude. But in the book, Brienne does eventually rape-stab Shagwell at Crackclaw Point, and rape-stab Rorg at the inn at the crossroads. And no, I'm not imagining this, the allusions are pretty heavy-handed. However, unlike in the show, Brienne's stabs are defensive, and she doesn't seem to enjoy them. I do predict that Brienne will eventually run into her 3rd potential rapist, Zolo. Now next we're back with the Brotherhood Without Banners at the Inn of the Kneeling Man. Now it should be noted that Show Thoros is kind of a combination between Book Thoros and a singer in the book named Tom O'Sevens. Book Thoros is rather somber, while Tom O'Sevens adds jokes and life to the group. We don't know much about Tom's background, but he did once play for Hoster Tully in Riverrun, and once for Lysa Tully in the Vale. Tom O'Sevens weirdly hates a song called The King Without Courage, and this makes me wonder if Tom was a Targaryen supporter. Here we get a goodbye from Hot Pie, who decides to stay behind at the inn. Although Arya does miss Hot Pie later on, in the book she doesn't have such a heartfelt goodbye. Now next we get an extra scene with Catelyn and the Blackfish where they remember Hoster Tully. Now Blackfish and Hoster had a feud, and here in the show, Blackfish claims that he has made peace with Hoster, and the two had forgotten what the feud was about. In the book, this is most certainly not the case. Hoster rambled about their dispute right up until the point in which he went into a coma and died. The two never reconciled. The dispute was that Hoster had arranged 3 different marriages for Blackfish, and Blackfish refused them all. Now, some fans theorize that Blackfish refused them because he's gay, but one has to remember that people don't marry for love in feudal societies. People have family obligations, and one's preference is largely irrelevant. So even if Blackfish were gay, he still has an obligation to marry. So what's the real reason for his refusal? Well, we do know that the potential brides were a Redwyne, a Bracken, and a Frey. I would say it's likely that Blackfish had a problem with each of these houses. Keep in mind that Blackfish's real name is Brynden, and it's likely he was named after Brynden Rivers, aka Bloodraven. In fact, this is mentioned by Bloodraven in the book. This means that Blackfish and Hoster's parents must have admired Bloodraven and his actions in order to name a son after him. Bloodraven hated Blackfires, and one can connect House Bracken and House Frey to House Blackfire. And one can connect House Redwyne to Illyrio. Of course, why Hoster didn't see these connections himself is a mystery. It seems the two had very different attitudes about politics. Now next we get an extra scene with Robb's wife where she meets some captured Lannister boys, and one of them looks remarkably like Tommen. Well, all Lannisters are said to look alike. Meanwhile, north of the Wall, we have the wildlings arriving at the Fist of the First Men to investigate the battle that went down. And frankly, it does look a bit like an album cover. Now, as in the book, there are horses here, but no men. However, here in the show, there's this design, and Mance is very explicit that the men are now whites. The book is a tad subtler about this fact. Jon and the wildlings find blood, and a dead dog, and dead horses, and little else is said about it. As readers, we're actually distracted away from the fact that there's no men, because Mance is demanding military intelligence from Jon. Jon is fearful of being outed as a mole, and he answers with both truth and lies. Elsewhere north of the Wall, the Night's Watch has arrived at Craster's Keep, and this is where Chet's conspiracy begins to form into the mutineers. The conspiracy of men that all wanted to kill Mormont at the Fist of the First Men all had different ideas about what to do afterwards, but it was Chet who decided he would take Craster's place and enjoy all of his wives. Apparently others in the conspiracy thought that Chet had a great idea, and it's the conspiracy members that make the most fuss at Craster's Keep. Now here in the show, Sam goes off and sees Gilly give birth, but in the book, Gilly is actually right upstairs, and Craster announces to everyone that he has a son. Interestingly, in the book, Craster is actually quite happy about having a son, which makes me think that Craster was worried about the Night's Watch bringing the others down on him. Now he has another offering to placate them. Now next we have an extra scene with Ramsay letting Theon escape. Now even though Theon doesn't appear again until Book 5, he does look back on an escape attempt. Instead of Ramsay, it's the serving wench Kira who helps Theon. She's the serving wench that Theon sleeps with when he's ruling Winterfell. In the show, he sleeps with Osha instead. Next, we have an extra scene where Stannis is saying goodbye to Melisandre, and he pleads with her to make him another shadow baby. In the book, Stannis has no idea about shadow babies. If they even exist at all, I would argue they don't. And we have no visibility on Stannis as Davos is in prison. Over in Slaver's Bay, we have a slave soldier, anti-slave soldier argument between Jorah and Barristan. The arguments presented here mirror the books. However, in the books, Dany visits each man in turn and hears him out. In the show, the two verbally spar in front of her. Next, Dany offers a dragon for all of the Unsullied, and here in the show, both Barristan and Jorah protest. However, in the book, it's just Barristan. Apparently, Book Jorah was completely on board with trading a dragon for an army. Now, as in the book, Dany gets Missandei in the deal, and Missandei actually speaks the line, Valar Morghulis. Now this line has made some fans wonder if Missandei has a faceless man past. Missandei does walk silently and knows way too many languages. However, lots of characters have said Valar Morghulis, or all men must die. So I would say the jury is still out on who Missandei really is. Now next we get an extra scene where Littlefinger hands over the throne's financial records to Tyrion, and we get the infamous Pod is a sex god scenes. We're just going to pretend these never happened. These aren't in the books, and Pod is like 12 years old. Meanwhile, near the Dreadfort, Theon is busy escaping, and we get some extra scenes of Theon almost getting raped before getting rescued by Ramsay. Now in the book, things are a bit different. As I said before, Kira is the one that comes to Theon with keys and a way out. It should be noted that Kira was Theon's bedwarmer and became Ramsay's bedwarmer after he burned Winterfell. And while Kira being around Ramsay does explain how she has access to keys, it doesn't explain how she would know the Dreadfort well enough to plan an escape. The whole thing seems suspicious, and I would guess that Ramsay coerced Kira into the plan. After escaping, she refuses to leave Theon's side, despite Theon telling her it would be a smarter idea if they split up. The two are caught, and Ramsay kills Kira and names one of his hounds after her. And finally, we have Brienne getting pulled off to be raped before Jaime saves her with a lie about Tarth being blessed with sapphires. Now here the show has added an interesting reason for Jaime's hand being chopped off. Locke does it to mock Jaime's entitlement. Now in the book, why Jaime's hand was taken off is a bit of a mystery. Roose Bolton claims it's because the brave companions wanted to prevent Roose from making peace with the Lannisters, and that somehow Stannis would reward them with Harrenhal. The claim has very little logic to it. I theorize that the brave companions work for Doran Martell, and it was a form of revenge against the Lannisters that also neutralizes a member of the Kingsguard. But only time will tell what the truth is. And that's all for episode 3.3. See you in episode 3.4.